So, how does one of the greatest novels ever written get its start? Well, in this case, it begins with desperation, a whole lot of debt, and a really, really dangerous idea. Today, we're diving into the dramatic origin story of Crime and Punishment. Okay, picture this. It's August 1865. We're in a cramped hotel room in Wiesbaden, Germany. Inside, a writer has just gambled away everything. He was desperately trying to pay off his late brother's debts, but instead, he's lost it all. And that writer? That's Fyodor Dostoevsky. He's completely broke after a disastrous run at the roulette table. The hotel staff has cut him off entirely. No food, no candles, nothing. He is literally trapped, starving, and all alone. And it's right here, at his absolute rock bottom, that this incredible desperation ignites a terrifying idea. This is where the story truly begins. Now here's the amazing part. Dostoevsky channels all of that pain and desperation not into some diary of self-pity, but straight into his art. He starts to imagine a character, a young man who takes a philosophical idea to its most horrifying, logical conclusion. But, this wasn't just one simple idea that popped into his head fully formed. No, it was actually a violent collision of two completely separate stories that fused together in the fever of that desperate hotel room. See, on one hand, Dostoevsky had this idea for social drama about the Marmeladov family, a heart-wrenching story about poverty and sacrifice. And on the other hand, he had this dark psychological thriller about a student who decides to murder someone just to test a theory. In a moment of absolute genius, he just smashes them together, creating this incredible world where both of these stories exist at the same time. And this brilliant fusion is captured perfectly in the protagonist's name, Raskolnikov. It comes from the Russian word raskal, which means split or schism. His entire internal conflict is right there in his name. He is, quite literally, the divided one. And look, don't just take my word for it. Here's what Dostoevsky himself wrote to his publisher. He makes it crystal clear from the get-go. This isn't just a book about a murder. It's about these strange, unfinished ideas floating in the air. He was writing a novel to fight a philosophical war. Okay, so what were these dangerous ideas floating around? To really get this novel, you have to understand the world it was born into, the absolute intellectual battlefield of 1860s Russia. I mean, this was a period of pure chaos. In 1861, serfdom is abolished. Boom! The entire foundation of society is shaken. You have these radical Western philosophies like rational egoism and utilitarianism flooding in. And then, in 1863, a novel called What Is to Be Done is published, and it becomes the absolute Bible for a whole generation of young radicals. And this was the core message of that new way of thinking, pushed by thinkers like Chernyshevsky. The idea was that humans are basically just logical machines, so evil isn't some deep moral problem, it's just a social one. You just need to engineer a perfect society and presto, crime disappears. It's a really seductive idea, right? But Dostoevsky found it horrifying. Because for Dostoevsky, this whole philosophy had one giant, fatal flaw. It completely ignored the messy, unpredictable, and often totally irrational reality of the human spirit. It left no room for conscience, for guilt, for love, or for God. And this entire novel is basically his answer to that question. And this is exactly how Raskolnikov takes that philosophy and runs with it to its most terrifying extreme. He divides the entire world into two types of people. On one side, you have the ordinary masses, the trembling creatures. And on the other, you have the extraordinary few, the Napoleons of the world, who actually have the right to step over the rules, even to kill, for some greater good. This line captures his cold logic perfectly. He sees murdering the old pawnbroker as a simple calculation. Her death will let him use her money to help hundreds of people. It's utilitarianism without a conscience. It's not murder, it's just arithmetic. So this is the question that just haunts him, that drives the entire plot. The murder was never really about the money. It's a test. It's a horrifying experiment he performs on himself to figure out which category he belongs to. Everything in the novel hinges on the answer to this question. But here's where the story gets really wild. This brilliant philosophical exploration wasn't just pulled from thin air. Dostoevsky had a shocking, real-world blueprint for his crime. The timeline here is, well, it's undeniable. In January of 1865, a real crime captivated Moscow. A man named Gerasim Chistov brutally murdered two elderly women with an axe. Just 8 months later, Dostoevsky pitches his novel. And when you look at the details, it's even more striking. Dostoevsky was clearly reading the newspaper reports and lifting key elements directly from the real-life case. The axe, the two female victims, the fact that the killer knew them, even hiding the axe in his coat. This real-life horror gave his fictional crime a terrifying authenticity. But this is where the artist takes over from the reporter. The real killer's name, Chistov, comes from a word meaning clean. Dostoevsky replaces him with Raskolnikov, the split one. He wasn't interested in a simple, clean murderer. He was fascinated by a fractured, divided soul. And that brings us right to the heart of the novel. It's the story of what happens when a perfect, rational theory on paper collides with the chaotic, bloody, and totally unpredictable reality of human action. Just look at the murder itself. Raskolnikov's plan is to use the blunt side of the axe, a calculated, almost symbolic gesture. But when the pawnbroker's innocent sister stumbles in, all that logic just evaporates. He strikes her with the sharp blade in a moment of pure animal panic. And right there, his perfect theory shatters into a million pieces. And this is his ultimate realization. The act didn't elevate him into a Napoleon. It completely destroyed him. He thought he was killing some worthless parasite, but what he really murdered was his own soul, his own connection to humanity. So in the end, this is Dostoevsky's powerful rebuttal to the philosophies of his time. He's basically screaming from the pages that you cannot calculate your way past conscience. You can't reason your way out of being human. The whole city of St. Petersburg becomes this fever dream, a mirror of Raskolnikov's sick soul. And yet, through all of that darkness, Dostoevsky insists that redemption, that resurrection is always possible. And so, the question that was born in that starving writer's hotel room is the one the novel leaves with all of us. It's not about whether a man can get away with murder. It's about whether, after destroying himself so completely, a soul can truly come back to life. A question that honestly still haunts us today.